Authority. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8, the city's website, and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *.
Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación en español para esta reunión del Consejo Municipal por teléfono. Marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091 #.
Thank you. If you are a board member or staff member, please be sure to unmute your microphone when speaking for the broadcast and recording. City Clerk is the host of the Zoom meeting. Speakers will be able to unmute themselves when recognized. At this time, I'll call the Urban Renewal Authority meeting to order and ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Chair Huseman,
Present.
Vice Chair Alan Thomas,
Present.
Commissioner Madera,
Present.
Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Noble,
Present.
Commissioner Hurst,
Present.
Commissioner Grimes, Commissioner Grimes,
You need to unmute.
you'll need to unmute Commissioner Grimes.
Present. Sorry, I was unmuted on my phone.
Thank you. Commissioner Ford,
Present.
Commissioner Douglas,
Here.
Commissioner Boucher, Commissioner Fairfield, Commissioner Lewis, Commissioner Tedesco. Chair Huseman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to excuse those members not present. Commissioner Hurst,
So moved.
Commissioner Madera.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to excuse those members not present. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say
Aye.
nay. You don't?
Okay, to be honest, I can't hear the question. I left my hearing aids home tonight.
Okay.
Can you tell me what the motion was again?
The motion was to excuse those members not present.
Oh, sure, I'll excuse him.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion passes unanimously. This time, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the minutes of December 20th, 2021. Vice Chair Alan Thomas,
So move.
Commissioner Madera.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of December 20th, 2021. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, we have Resolution URA 2022-01, First Amendment to Owners Representative Services Agreement. Does anybody on council have questions for staff? Commissioner Noble?
Yes, my question is, why are we continuing to negotiate when we had a deadline of December 31st?
Thank you, ma'am. Jason Rogers, Deputy City Manager for the residents. As it pertains to the existing agreement, we had an expiration date of December 31st of 2021. Based on discussions with the board, it was the direction or the consensus that we as staff took away was to continue to negotiate in good faith with the owner's rep to come to an agreement. Given the short week and I think as the board had concluded, the benefit that this individual provides in those services, that it was in all of our best interest to seek a short-term extension of the existing agreement while we work through the negotiations and are able to bring that back to the board in a future executive session, once again, to further define our position.
And at what point did we know that this contract would be expiring on December 31st?
We had an executive session, ma'am, with the CCURA board. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jenna, that would be the December 20th date.
Right, I'm sorry, I meant the staff. When did the staff know the contract would be expiring on December 31st?
We were made fully aware of that in November when we re-reviewed the contract. But Jenna, you may be able to give me specifics to make sure that I'm not misquoting or misstating the date or time range.
You are not misquoting the time range, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Because of the compounding interest, I would vote no on the amendment unless it ends on January 31st.
Well, if I may, ma'am, and since I can't see you with the cross, I would raise my hand, but just to interject for clarity purposes, the short-term agreement that we have and are bringing forward to you is only for a 3-month period process. As I would say, given that we are and will have to continue to engage with this individual and that we have ongoing, I'll say, development matters at Mile High Greyhound Park that this individual is assisting on, it would probably be prudent March 31st, 2022 or less, just to clarify, is in our expectation to be able to bring this to you all sooner than later. And I would say that there is a general interest as well with our owners rep to do such, but given how these things can be fluid and morph, we didn't want to be short-sighted in our ability to, once again, bring to you all a contract or an agreement or principal terms and conditions that didn't meet your expectations. So we are trying to give us enough cushion, but also keep us engaged with that individual to get back in front of you all sooner than later.
I'm looking in Granicus here, and as I try to pull up the details of the First Amendment to the ORA, the file that actually comes up under that heading is the First Amendment to amended and restated intergovernment agreement loan funds. So the actual document that details what would be in that agreement is not loaded within the packet there for us to be able to review to determine whether or not this is something that we would like to approve or not approve.
If I am looking at it, sir, yes. You are correct. We have the wrong agreement up.
Great. I'll make a motion to continue this to the next available Urban Renewal Authority meeting. Commissioner
Thank you, sir.
Madera.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue this item to the next Urban Renewal Authority meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. This will be continued to the next Urban Renewal Authority meeting. This time, we're going to adjourn to the regular city council meeting. The Zoom webinar will remain the same for citizen comment and everything else going on. Once again, live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *.
Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación en español para esta reunión del Consejo Municipal por teléfono. Marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091 #.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Huseman,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas,
Present.
Councilmember Madera,
Present.
Councilmember Davis, Councilmember Noble,
Present.
Councilmember Hurst,
Present.
Councilmember Grimes, Councilmember Ford,
Present.
Councilmember Douglas,
Present.
Mayor Huseman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This time, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Would like to invite everybody present and remote to join me in a moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to take a moment to also recognize the service and sacrifice of Mr. Mac Jasso, who worked in our Public Works and Parks Recreation Department, who unfortunately lost his life last week due to a tragic accident. So please keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers while we have this moment of silence. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All public comment will occur during citizen communication except for public hearings. Persons who registered to speak under multiple items will be allowed to speak multiple times. Per council policy, citizen communication is the time on our agenda for the public to address council on business and affairs of the city. Per council policy, citizen communication cannot occur before the time stated in the agenda without council approval. The estimated time in the agenda for citizen communication is 6:40 p.m. The time is now 6:43 p.m. Therefore, no action needs to be taken by the city council. The city council is not able to hear any comments at this time on land use matters that are before or may come before council. Please reserve such comments for the appropriate public hearing. As a reminder, we take your comments seriously, but do not generally respond to comments until later in the evening. Council must wait until administrative council business to take action in response to citizen communication. Council members can ask questions of speakers if desired. The city needed advanced registration in order to participate in citizen communication for this meeting. If you're currently in this meeting to speak during citizen communication, please listen for me to call your name and the clerk will unmute you so you may begin. If you do not respond or are disconnected, you may miss your chance to comment. Please give your name and address for the record and keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. If a council member wants to ask questions, please ask to be recognized when the speaker is finished. Tonight we have one speaker, Eloy Espinoza, who joins us again to discuss the park in Buffalo Highlands.
Eloy, you should be able to unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Okay, I'd just like to thank everyone again for the time. I just wanted to touch base again because from the last meeting, I don't believe that the full article from the Land Development Code was said, and from my understanding, floodplain isn't supposed to be counted, and so our community, I started actually a petition that I emailed to the city council, and I have over 125 community members that some of them have made comments, and signing petitioning that they want a park. And at the end of the day, when I review the agreement that we had the agreement that the city had with the builders, it quotes, whereas, prereq to obtaining city approval for such development in accordance with the city's land development code. The city's land development code requires 3%, and we need to keep in mind that's for houses, streets, and that does not include public parks, floodplains, trails. There's the whole list. And I think some of the feedback that we've gotten and other community members have gotten is that they're counting the floodplains. That should not be the case. And part of the code has been cut out. That's not okay. And when I look at our sister neighborhood, well, not sister neighborhood, but the neighborhood getting built next to us, I have great concern that the code's not being followed for them. That's 2,000 people. These land development codes are made so that way populations in this area don't get overcrowded. And right now, I think with the current plans and people, for whatever reason, omitted half the land development code for open space, I think we're coming into a problem here where it's gonna be overpopulated in this area because for whatever reason, we're not following the land development code and counting open space that shouldn't be counted. And that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Espinoza, for your comments. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we thank you again for your time, and I know that staff will be reaching out to you with more information.
Thank you.
Thank you all for speaking with us tonight. If follow-up is necessary, you should expect to be contacted by a staff member. Members of the public were also able to submit written comments online and by mail. No written comments were received by the deadline. If anyone wishes to speak at a future council meeting, please check the meeting agenda and city website for information on how to register or submit written comments. Next up, we're going to move to presentations. We have our environmental planning policy and oil and gas monthly update. I'd like to invite Anita Riley, city planner, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. This is is my presentation being shown?
No, Anita, it is not.
Oh, okay. Do I need to wait for that?
Nope, Anita, you're gonna have to share your presentation if you can, please.
Oh, certainly will. And just give me a moment. Okay, can you see my screen?
We can now, yes, Anita, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. This is the monthly update for the environmental planning and policy and oil and gas updates. The presentation has been rearranged, and so tonight we're going to start with our environmental update. We'll start with the City Organizational Sustainability Survey, which is a means to identifying the key components of a vision for sustainability for the city as an organization, and will result in recommendations to the City Council. A draft memo has been submitted and revised and is currently under review by city staff. The Environmental Policy Advisory Committee continues to receive resources and information, and with follow-up on a monthly basis. There is also a meet and greet open house that is currently being considered for EPAC members and is expected to be held in the last few weeks of January. The air quality monitoring plan includes comprehensive ideas for air quality monitoring around the city, and a draft plan of it has been received and is currently under review by staff. And the low impact development guidance, which is a part of the water quality policy deliverables from our consultants, is currently in development. Now, not on the slide, one of our consultants, Pinion Environmental, is available to help the city draft comments for the Suncor water quality permit renewal. And the staff will be meeting with the city manager's office soon to discuss this possibility. And any further information that comes of that will be provided to the council during the February update. And for our oil and gas update, we'll start with the city activities. We have 5 applications that are currently being processed by the city. And in a recent conversation with Extraction Oil and Gas, which is now operating under Civitas Resources, they are considering withdrawing the applications for the Owl and Falcon well sites, which are located on the TR Ranch PUD. And on our table, those are indicated in blue. This map shows the areas where there are active applications, and the locations that are shown in orange that are just northeast of E470 show those sites for which applications may be withdrawn. At the state level, all formerly active Form 2 and Form 2A applications have been withdrawn. This is due to rules that were instituted at the start of 2021 that require local government decisions to be provided for certain types of applications, where the local governments regulate the siting for oil and gas locations, which the city, Commerce City does. This next map identifies the spacing order locations that are located within the city limits and around the city. This map has been updated to show some additional orders. These are not new spacing orders, but they are near the city and so have been included on the map. Regarding exceedances by Suncor, we had 6 exceedances that were recorded between November 22nd and December 20th. These are related to 2 specific incidents. The first occurred at the East Plant on November 28th and was due to, involved gas at the flare combustion zone that did not meet the minimum requirement of 277 BTU per standard cubic feet. This event is currently under review. The second incident occurred on December 7th at the West Plant. There were 5 exceedances related to sulfur dioxide, sulfur pit, and hydrogen sulfide emissions. These were due to planned shutdown and maintenance activities in the sulfur recovery complex. Additionally, the public was notified of 2 fire incidents during this time frame, one on November 29th, where refinery personnel responded to the incident and an all clear notice was sounded. Then on December 17th, the refinery personnel again responded to the incident. No injuries were reported, and the event is currently under review. And that concludes this presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for that presentation. Does anybody on council have any questions regarding the presentation? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for tonight's presentation. I was just curious, do we know how bad the sulfur dioxide affects the residents, since we had excessive amounts in 1 month and there was 3 in 1 day?
We don't have that information on file at the moment. I can check with CDPHE and see if I can gain some additional information.
Okay. Do you know approximate timeline, like when that will be?
I don't have a time that I know of, but I will get to it immediately tomorrow morning and will respond as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. It's in your presentation, it said 5 of the exceedances are from the West Plant. Mm-hmm. Do we know why in 1 month are they, coming from that same plant? And why are they all the same type of thing? Why are they all the sulfur from the sulfur recovery complex, and what are they doing to correct it?
So that is a result of one particular incident that was due to maintenance activities at the sulfur recovery complex. So emissions that exceeded federal and state limits were recorded at that time.
So are they doing something to correct it that we're aware of?
I can get more information for you.
Because I would hope so, if to make sure, the city also, and, to protect the residents, to make sure they are doing something to correct it instead of just reporting it to us, what is going to be done about it. So if that can be addressed as well in the next presentation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this event was still under investigation at the time that the presentation was put together, so we may have more information at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
Ms. Riley, did Civitas give its reasoning for considering withdrawal of the Falcon and Owl applications?
So the conversation surrounded retaining the one well site, which I believe may be the Heron well site, and that they may do some directional drilling at that point.
So Heron would be the main site from which, are they talking
Yes.
about more wells then?
No, there would be no additional well pads.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, thank you. This is in reference to Suncor. Could you also find out why these exceedances happened due to maintenance? That seems odd to me, so I would like to have the answer to that. And I would also like to find out more about what they plan to do about it, just rather than reporting. So if you could also find that out, I would really appreciate it.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you again for your time this evening, ma'am, for the presentation. We'll move on to our second presentation, which is in regards to the 2022 private activity bonds initial discussion. We'd like to invite Jenna Lowry, management analyst, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, we will have our first of at least two conversations regarding private activity bonds. The main purpose of this introduction session is to review what a private activity bond is. We will also discuss the city's private activity bond allocation history, overview a project that has requested a share of the city's 2022 allocation, and seek council's feedback on the 2022 allocation request. Private activity bonds, or PABs, are tax-exempt bonds that are issued by or on behalf of a local or state government for the purpose of providing special financing benefits for qualified projects. These PABs are allocated to municipalities each year by the state. And in a nutshell, PABs allow governments to borrow on behalf of private companies and thus act as an alternative to corporate bond issuance. Interest on a PAB is not excluded from total gross income. In order for a project to qualify to receive a portion of the city's annual PAB allocation, it must fall into one of the below categories, which are quite specific. These qualifications were included in the packet items for tonight, so I will not read from that list now, but I'm happy to revisit it later. As with other municipalities, the city receives an annual allocation from the statewide PAB ceiling. Every year, our finance team reaches out to various departments to determine if an allocation to a specific project is needed. Private developers can also contact the city to request a portion of the city's annual allocation. If no projects are requested or identified, staff then requests that City Council assign the full allocation to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. Right now, there is not a formal process for applying for a share of the city's allocation. However, due to an anticipated increase in developer requests and a general need to improve the process, staff is working on a formal PAB allocation policy. The allocations over the last 3 years have been fairly straightforward. In 2021, the city allocated the full share to CHAFA to be applied to future city projects or given to first-time home buyers. In both 2020 and 2019, the full allocation was also given to CHAFA, but instead to be used for the Mile High Greyhound Park redevelopment efforts. So that formal policy that I previously mentioned is still in draft form, but will be presented to council for consideration later this quarter. The city currently has not received its 2022 allocation amount from the state, which does typically occur in January or February of each year. That said, one developer has requested a portion of our allocation. This particular developer actually reached out in Q4 of last year and is actively working on the financial package for their project. The developer needs a general statement of commitment that the city is willing to share a portion of our 2022 allocation, but not yet requesting a specific dollar amount, since we of course don't know our share. This general commitment is needed so that the developer may further their plan to get a loan through the Commerce City Housing Authority and for financing negotiations with the county. The project in question would be located at 7001 Colorado Boulevard and would offer 100 affordable multifamily units that would range in size from 1 to 4 bedrooms on an approximate 4-acre site. The goal of that project is to provide quality housing located within walking distance of schools, employment services, and the light rail station. The land for the project is not yet annexed into the city, but early entitlement work has begun. Also worth noting that this project qualified for the city's expedited priority case review policy. This image gives you all a better idea of the site's location along Colorado Boulevard. And this is the current project schematic. Please note that the schematic has not yet gone through the city's review process and is subject to change based on site access and other review terms. So to summarize, tonight staff is seeking council's permission to agree to share a portion of the city's 2022 allocation with the developer. Staff would then draft a general letter of support for the project, promising a share of the allocation. We would return later this year to council to discuss the exact allocation amount awarded to the developer and the proposed PAB allocation process policy. That concludes my presentation. Jason and I are both available to answer questions. And if you have project-specific questions, the developer's representative is also on the line this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that presentation. Does anybody on council have any questions at this time? Councilmember Douglas.
Yes. So this looks great if you just skim over it. Of course, we want available access to low-income housing here for our citizens. However, I'm looking over this, and I've been looking over it a lot. I see that there are other ways that we could use this private activity bond money, and I'm wondering why we haven't looked at these other options before this. Once again, I feel like a developer has put something together and they have approached us. They've kind of put us in a place where we have to make a decision whether we're going to support them or not. I don't feel like I have enough information on who these people are, where the money would be going, who would purchase the land, who would be responsible for that. There's just so much that I feel is really up in the air on this, and I really don't feel like I have enough information to make a really good decision for our residents. And yes, this looks great at first glance. You look at it, and it's in a wonderful place that's close to the light rail. But again, and I've heard too many people lately either come to the council meeting or approach me personally with complaints that they have regarding the low-income housing that's available in Commerce City, and And it seems like we have no oversight on this. So once again, we're being presented something that they have approached us, and it's not something that we sought out. It's not something that we actually really looked at what our options are. And I'm being asked to vote on this, and I am not comfortable with it. I really am not comfortable with it. I see on here that we could be looking at something like a nonprofit hospital or private universities. I'm not really familiar with private universities, but I know like on the dog track, we probably should have had like space for a community college to come in. And we don't have that. I find out they give $300,000 to the school district so they can have mobile units on their grounds in place of what should have been offered as adequate facilities for our students and our families. And I have so many questions on this, and I'm not feeling comfortable with it. Once again, they are bringing something to us and expecting us to say yes automatically. I don't know if there's much more else I can say about it, but I'm not really happy with the process here.
Councilmember Noble.
Councilmember Douglas, you mentioned that there could be other uses, and I know that you have a lot of experience in affordable housing. Could you talk about what those other options might be, what you're thinking about there?
Oh, not necessarily for this particular space, but I'm going down this list of alternatives. Again, not necessarily for this particular space. What I'm not feeling comfortable with is that somebody comes and presents us a plan and expects us to say yes, because there's a deadline of going to CHAFA. And again, that's the part that I'm not comfortable with. But for the future, I really think that we should look at what is available as far as this money is concerned. And again, it looks like we're going to be having a lot of developers come to us. Are we then serving as the bank, basically, for these projects?
Councilmember Douglas, would
Yes.
you read some of the items that are on the list so that people know what you're speaking about?
Well,
About the other uses?
yeah, one says qualified 501c3 bonds for use for nonprofit hospitals and private universities. We could use them for mortgage credit certificates for qualified home buyers, and I have used those in the past to help people get into homes. There's also exempt facilities bonds for, now we don't really want to look at this, I do believe, hazardous waste facilities, possibly water and sewer facilities, mass commuting facilities, I don't know what that is exactly, local district heating and cooling facilities, local electric energy or gas facilities, and then the last one, of course, is what we're looking at here is multifamily housing, I guess, bonds. So I guess I just wish I knew more about this to make a good decision on this. Again, they're coming to us, they have a deadline, they want us to sign a letter of approval. We have no, I don't know who these people are. Is this somebody that we want to welcome into the city to develop here? And And I don't know, I just don't feel like I have enough information.
Good evening, Mr. McFadden.
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Would you like to address the concerns raised by Councilmember Douglas?
certainly. And Councilwoman Douglas, I agree with you in that the process that we're going through is not specified at this point. As Jenna indicated, the city is putting together a process for applicants, developers, potentially universities to come to the city to ask for their private activity bond authority to do projects. The practical aspect is that the city has $3 to $4 million of private activity bond authority, and almost any project would need to go elsewhere to get enough allocation to do a project, whether it's a single-family mortgage bond or a power facility or anything else. The process that I'm proposing that we engage here is that we receive some sort of support from the city, which will allow us to go to Adams County and other places to get the balance of the $15 million of authority we need in order for this project to move forward. This is not an entitlement question. This is really just the first step in the process to go secure the rest of the bond allocation to make this affordable housing project viable. So I concur that we wish we had a more specific process. As Jenna said, that's forthcoming. But if we want to see this project happen, this is generally the first step. It starts with the most local jurisdiction, which is you.
Okay, are you representing the developer?
Excuse me, I probably should have prefaced that. My name is Scott McFadden. My company is Prospect. I've been a developer of multifamily housing in Denver for over 25 years. I've developed over 8,000 units, about 1,500 of those are affordable housing. And this includes projects that are in downtown Denver, pretty much any jurisdiction outside of, I think Aurora is one jurisdiction I have not worked in. I specialize in infill projects. I've done for sale, for rent, pretty much anything. I'm a very small company. I have 2 other employees. We do 1 or 2 projects at a time. I'm sure projects I've done you have seen along light rail lines or downtown. The current project we're working on is something that's very similar in the city of Lawmont, where it's 88 affordable housing units that started construction in December of last year, and we'll welcome our first residents this month. So I am local, I am focused, I am experienced, and I do what I say I'm gonna do. So I'm not sure what else I can tell you about my resume.
Can you tell me how long this would remain low income qualifying?
At least 30 years, at least 30 years.
And what would happen after those 30 years?
Generally, the restrictions that come with the tax credits and the bonds, which are the encumbrances, the covenants that run with the financing, expire. And at that point, the affordable restrictions would be removed. We are speaking with the Commerce City Housing Authority about participating in the ownership of this project. We've had a couple of meetings with them. We have a letter of support from the board. We were talking to them about actually being the issuer of the bonds for this project. And with that, with their participation, we are also discussing some sort of means to potentially acquire the project sometime after 15 years. It's unclear what the financing will allow, but that is a potential option as well.
I'm sorry, what did you say would happen after the 15 years?
After 15 years, one of the requirements expires, which is an opportunity for somebody to purchase the property. So as part of the negotiation discussion with Tracy and the board, we're talking about a means for potentially the housing authority to purchase the asset or the ownership interest, however it works out mechanically. At that point, it could happen also at the 20th year or 25th year. It's really driven by the financing.
So are you saying after 15 years, if it wasn't the housing authority who purchased it, then it could be sold to whomever, or how does that work?
Yes, it could, but the affordable restrictions remain.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like a market value sale then?
The sale will be determined by market rate, but the affordable restrictions would remain for at least 30 years.
Okay,
Those are covenants that are recorded on the property. The requirements are maintained.
all right. Okay, I think you've answered a lot of my questions. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else on council have any questions or comments for either the presentation or the applicant? Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, I have one more question. Are you a nonprofit organization or for-profit?
I'm a for-profit developer.
All right.
But once again, we are talking to the Housing Authority about participating in the ownership of this project.
And what would that entail?
It's similar, the Housing Authority has done it before in other projects. Basically, it allows the Housing Authority, it's a state statute that allows this to occur. It's pretty common throughout the state in many jurisdictions. I've done it in 4 or 5 places over the years. But basically, the Housing Authority enters into the partnership. It provides property tax exemption, which makes the project feasible. And for that, the Housing Authority receives some compensation.
Can you explain the compensation?
It comes in the form of a fee, basically, that is paid annually.
And so your company would be paying that fee, is that correct?
The entity that owns the asset will be paying the fee to the Housing Authority, yes.
And when you say the entity that owns the asset, what does that mean?
It means that every project is owned by a special limited partnership. My company would be the manager or general partner of that entity, so.
So then that partner would be then the manager of the project from there?
The property management company is a professional property management company. Currently, I'm using a company called Mission Rock to manage the project in Longmont. They manage thousands of units in Denver and other places, but it's a professional property management company. This is a different situation. I know that council has been presented some issues with other affordable housing projects that aren't necessarily affiliated with the Housing Authority, but this is a different situation than those as far as the ownership, as far as the structure, type of asset and such.
Thank you.
Councilmember Noble?
Yes, I'm interested in how this works in with plans that we have for Colorado Boulevard near the light rail station. I'm looking at the future land use map, and it has mixed use and public and state. So would we be in a position to have any influence over what goes into this space if we make this agreement?
This agreement is not a question of entitlement. This is a question of financing. The entitlement is forthcoming. We have to annex and zone the land over the next few months. We're intending, if we move forward tonight, we intend to make that application likely during the month of January. We have had discussions with the planning department. We've had 3 or 4 pre-application meetings. And this project is in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the stationary plan for 72nd and Colorado.
Okay, I am looking at the map now, so that was why I asked the question. Thank you.
Councilmember Madera?
Yeah, do we know how much we're being asked to allocate of our PAB?
Jenna, do you, maybe you may want to weigh in on that request?
Most certainly. So when we come back before council with both the allocation process policy and this matter at a later date, that's when we would narrow in on what percentage of our allocation we would contribute to this project. Obviously the project needs substantial financial assistance. That said, we do not yet know our amount, and we are currently still prioritizing projects internally, so that would be determined by council at a later date. There's no commitment tonight regarding what percentage of our allocation we would give this project, just that we would allocate some percentage of it.
And what's the deadline for the allocation?
So the typical deadline for the allocation, sir, and you all, as the previous members of the previous sitting council, may be aware that we had brought a resolution forward to the council in September, as that is the state's, I would say, critical deadline for either an allocation to what's identified under the state program to fund a privately developed project, or to allocate back to the state for the statewide allocation. So what we are actually doing tonight is bringing well in advance a request that we have received, which is the typical process, given that this private activity bond is tied to fund privately developed projects. So this is not something that we promote as a programmatic effort. It is in response to requests like you find with Mr. McFadden, so that as we receive these requests from one of the 7 identified activities, we can start to track and then appropriately come back before you with what we believe is the appropriate request to help fund based on all of the totality that comes in across the year, leading up to September of 2022.
And have we had any other interest for any of these other uses, or are we aware of anything that might be coming forward?
Historically, sir, we have not seen these type of requests outside of the, once again, new construction or rehabilitation of housing for low to moderate income, or qualified redevelopment bonds. Once again, we respond to those, and those two, I would say, eligible project or activities is what we have seen in the past. But that has been a minimal number of requests, obviously.
And for the qualified redevelopment bonds, is that something that the city can initiate, or is that primarily done through private entities?
It's typically the obligation that's being requested of the city is in response to an actual private project that is seeking to activate one of those activities, not a systematic program. For instance, sir, if I may, we actually receive a number of requests from, I would say, entities, 501c3 and or private requests that are outside of the City of Commerce City's boundaries. Some that may want to leverage these private activity bonds, because they are transferable, to other projects that meet these activities in City and County of Denver, City of Aurora, and so forth. We have tried to keep these dollars when requested within the boundaries of City of Commerce City to aid existing or potentially future residents. It is not then to allow for the state, as what occurred last year, to allocate as they see fit to, I would say, further the need for affordable housing, low to moderate income housing, or other activities across the state.
So, Councilman Madera, if I may, the impetus for making the request at the first meeting of the year is that the County of Adams, who have had discussions with this project on starting last summer, and who is generally supportive of this use at this site, because this site is in Adams County today. They do have a formal application process, or are instituting one this year, and their application opens up later this month. In order to be successful in that process, and what I'm told, this is the only project also being discussed there, but in order to be successful there, you really have to have local support. in the form of things like the housing authority support that we have and financial support from the city with delegation of its private activity bonds. So this is the first step in the process. Once again, this project needs a total of plus or minus 15 million of private activity bond authority. The city has 3 or 4, Adams County has 6 or 7. We would, just as Jason said about other jurisdictions, make requests to other neighbors jurisdictions such as Thornton or potentially Denver to potentially use some of their money. And eventually we probably end up at the state Department of Local Affairs, who has the largest pot outside of Chaffa, to use theirs. Once again, you know, this request allows the city to focus its private activity bond authority in the city as opposed to giving it to Chaffa, which it has, I think, the past 2 years, in which case it was controlled at the end of the year. So hence the request on January 3rd.
Thank you for that.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, thank you. Have you considered the possibility of doing retail on the main level with apartments above? Just because we are sorely lacking in the availability of services here, especially in that particular area, although it would be close to the light rail. Once again, our economic development would be going out of the city without something like that. Is that a consideration?
It is a consideration, Councilman Douglas. We would need to verify it works with the zoning that we're seeking on the site. We think that a community use somewhere on the site, likely in the corner of 70th and Colorado, would be helpful for the neighborhood, helpful for our residents, helpful for the neighborhood and our residents to get together in one place. Whether that's a coffee shop, which I know has been done in other places, other cities, or other parts of Commerce City, a bodega, some other place that is a community use. We just need to make sure that it works with the zoning. But I have done that in numerous locations as far as adding retail to the ground floor. It is, in a location like this, a project cost, meaning that it really is not accretive to the financing or accretive to the income from the project. But as a community use, we think it would be helpful and viable.
I have another question. What is your deadline with Chava for submitting a letter, I guess, is what you're asking from us, showing support?
As I said, it really is the next step in the process is to go to Adams County. And their application, from what I'm told, will be open sometime in the middle of this month. But we really are looking for, support from this project tonight to really continue with the entitlement process, to continue with the financing process. Putting together one of these projects is hurting a lot of cats. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And we'd like to continue with this. We think it's a great use for this site. And we hope that we get that support tonight.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you, everybody, for the presentation. I look at the events that have transpired over the last week, and, there's 1,100 homes in Colorado that are no longer livable. Almost 1,000 of them completely destroyed. And the impact that is going to have on housing prices throughout the region is going to be catastrophic for a lot of people who are trying to get into housing. And unfortunately, it's just going to jack up cost of housing for everybody involved. And a project like this that is focused on making sure that people such as our school teachers and our firefighters and our police officers have an affordable and safe and clean place to live, I think is critically important. And so I'm fully in support of us offering a letter of support. And of course, it's contingent at this point. It's just an offer of letter of support. And we come back at a later date and determine if financially, if that's something that we want to do. But why not pursue this as a means to help out members in the community who need a safe, affordable place to live? And quite honestly, I'd much rather that the money be allocated from our end and we determine where it goes than to kick it off to another organization and rely on that organization to make decisions that may not be better aligned for the residents in the community that we'll live in and represent. So I think this is a good idea for us to move forward. We do need to give direction to staff on whether or not to prepare that letter moving forward. Is there any objection to doing so? Are you good, Ms. Lowry?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time this evening. That concludes our presentations. We will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, and non-controversial. They are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, there are 4 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anyone on council wish to remove an item off the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Grimes, I cannot see you up there. Did you want to pull anything? I'll take that as a no. Seeing nobody wanting to pull an item, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Will the city clerk please read the titles and take a roll call vote?
Minutes of the December 20th, 2021 regular meeting. Resolution 2022-01, a resolution authorizing award of a contract for right-of-way landscape maintenance and repair services to Sierra Landscaping and Maintenance. Resolution 2022-02, a resolution authorizing award of contract for replacement of pool dehumidification units to Frontier Mechanical Incorporated. Resolution 2022-04, a resolution appointing members to designated boards and commissions of Commerce City. Councilmember Madera.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Noble.
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes.
Yes.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Douglas.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Huseman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, sir. This time we'll move on to resolutions. We have Resolution 2021-114, posting locations for ordinances in public meetings. Mr. Gibson, would you like to make the presentation, please?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. Tonight, we have an update on information related to Resolution 2021-114 regarding the notice posting locations for ordinances and meeting notices. So as a background, Colorado law requires public bodies to designate posting locations for public meetings by the first meeting of the year, which is tonight. The City Clerk's office schedules a resolution for approval by council no later than the first regular meeting of each year. On December 20th, 2021, City Council continued the resolution designating 2022 posting locations to receive additional information on adding more posting locations. And again, Resolution 2021-114 must be approved tonight per statute. So in our charter, before 2015, 6 posting locations minimum were designated annually for ordinances passed on first and second readings per the charter. Those locations were 2 at the Civic Center, a couple parks, grocery stores, community centers, and schools in Commerce City. In 2015, voters approved a charter amendment to reduce the minimum number of locations to 2. City Council designated the same posting locations for ordinances as the same locations for public hearings and meeting notices within the annual resolution. Colorado State Statute, CRS 246402, parentheses C1, requires public bodies to designate their posting locations for meeting notices at the first regular meeting of the year. Additionally, Colorado Revised Statutes state it is the intent of the General Assembly that local governments transition from posting physical notices of public meetings in physical locations to posting notices on a website, social media account, or other official online presence of the local government to the greatest extent practicable. So the current posting practices that we have is the City Clerk's office posts the notices physically at the Civic Center for meeting notices, public hearing notices, and ordinances passed on first and second reading. Ordinances and public hearing notices are posted physically at the Civic Center, circulated in the Sentinel or Denver Post, depending on publication deadlines, and on the city's website. And then we post the city council agendas and board and commission agendas at commerce.legistar.com, which is linked on the city's website. Community Relations then posts meeting information on social media. So a few examples of our posting practices on our website. The city calendar has information on each upcoming board and commission and city council meeting. Whenever you click on those individual city calendar events, you'll have, when we're meeting virtually, you'll have the Zoom registration link, and then you'll have the link to the commerce.legistar.com website, which looks like this for the public. So it'll have all of the board and commission meetings with the agendas available to view, and you can both view upcoming agendas and historical agendas, minutes, and meeting details of each meeting. You can also search individual legislation and different board and commission that you're interested in. And this also includes our Urban Renewal Authority and our General Improvement District body meetings. Additionally, on the city clerk's page, we have our legal notices, which includes ordinances passed on first and second reading and our notice of public hearings. And then community relation posts information. They generally strive for the Friday before the meeting, both on Facebook and on Twitter and Nextdoor. And generally, their Facebook posts include a couple bullet points on agenda items with the Zoom link registration, the link to the city's video center to watch it live, and then also information on the Channel 8, as well as the phone number and conference code for Spanish interpretation services. So some considerations for City Council is, again, the Colorado legislature is encouraging local governments to move away from physical posting requirements. Any locations added to the resolution will be a legal requirement, which means if a location is incidentally left off from a location, that would present risks and challenges for those meetings occurring and action taken by City Council at those meetings if it's not properly posted. And adding locations outside the City Clerk's office staff control, so me and Jordan, the Deputy City Clerk, introduces, again, risks and potential challenges to meetings and actions taken by Council at those meetings that weren't properly noticed. When we met with PRG staff, because the recreation centers were one of the key locations that Council was considering, they had concerns of installing posting boxes at the newly renovated and newly built recreation centers on the freshly installed brick or newly painted brick, as well as finding a good location for those posting boxes that would catch general attendance traffic for those seeking information. And then you also have the consideration that the chain of custody for legal notices, whenever Jordan and I email different PRG staff, from what I recall, there's about 20 plus variable hour employees that staff each of the recreation center desks. And also you have considerations for whenever facilities are closed for annual cleanings or whenever supervisory staff are at annual trainings, and also staff turnover at the recreation centers. Not that we are being self-deterministic in that meeting notices would be missed, but there is a risk there that we feel would be unnecessary for both the city clerk's office and the PRG staff. And also for council to consider what they want as a legal requirement for themselves and what they seek as a policy direction for staff, which are two different things. There's a difference between having a policy requirement that staff posts on social media or at these recreation centers in addition to legal requirements, or if they want those locations as minimum legal requirements, which must be met for each meeting to take place, each public hearing to take place, and properly noticed for ordinances passed on first and second reading. So, staff recommends council approve the resolution as is to mitigate risks and potential challenges for meetings in 2022. And staff is prepared to work on adding QR codes and additional notices to recreation centers, the golf course, parks, the website, and social media posts that link to the agenda site. From there, we can track engagement on the commerce.legistar.com to see if there's a noticeable growth in website traffic, if we increase those posting locations as a matter of policy rather than a legal requirement. And then staff would come back with a presentation sometime in mid to late 2022 where council could then weigh in on what you would like direction for 2023 direction, which would allow us time to purchase those posting boxes, make a more formal display at any recreation center or city facility that you choose, and have time to implement it for 2023 postings. So with that, I'm available for any questions council may have, any discussion you would like, and then we have City Attorney Matt Hayter and Community Relations Manager Travis Huntington available to take questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Noble?
All of that makes sense except for City Hall. No business is conducted here. Very limited business is conducted here. So could you explain the reasoning? We don't have people really going in and out of City Hall. We don't have people attending meetings and so forth.
Sure, thank you for the question, Councilmember Noble. So we post at City Hall because, again, the charter requires us to designate 2 posting locations. City Hall is within Jordan and I's control. During COVID, we have been posting on the front northwest doors right over here. Since, of course, guests can't come in and see the posting box that's generally outside of our office. So we've been posting all of our agenda notices, public hearing notices, and ordinances on the front doors of Civic Center. So even those that aren't coming in to transact business or need to make an appointment, they can still see those postings on the front door. And then we have our city's website as a second designated location for meeting notices, ordinance notices, and public hearing notices.
I would also speculate that part of the reason that the legislature has encouraged the posting of meeting notices electronically is the pure recognition that a lot of people do not go to the city hall in their community on a regular basis to see posted meetings. So the council legislature has pushed for more electronic meetings because, as Mr. Gibson or as our city clerk indicated, unless you're, for us at least, unless you're here for court, possibly to submit a land use application or some other city business, you're not going to see that notice. So it's a very good point, and I think it is indicative of why the legislature has pushed for more electronic notices, because there is not necessarily one central place where everybody goes in the community to see that notice.
Yeah. And I'm perplexed why Commerce City voters reduced it from 6 to 2 as a charter amendment. I mean, that just getting it on the charter, on the ballot itself is a project that would have had to have been council driven, I think. It wouldn't have been a petition by voters. So what was the reasoning for reducing from 6 to 2? Less transparency.
Councilmember Noble, I'm not sure the exact reason. I know it was council initiated, I believe, if I did the research right back in our election files. But I would wager to guess it has something to do with either state statute compliance whenever they move to requiring cities to post more electronically rather than physically, or it was a part of a charter cleanup process that typically happens every 5 to 10 years for municipalities generally.
Well, if we go with this plan, I think that the timeline needs to be moved up considerably, that there could be a reference point that's within 5 months rather than 7 to 8 and waiting until 2023. I don't think that's necessary. I think you can figure this out sooner, and I think that the city council members made it pretty clear that they would like to see these boxes in recreation centers, so that would be where I would hope we would aim.
Are there any other questions for staff? Mr.
That would
Tinklenberg?
need to be direction from full council.
Seeing no other questions for staff, I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-114. Councilmember Madera.
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second the motion.
Have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-114. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, I think staff's plan's a good one, having the direction for policy to increase the notice because, as we all know, people do take their information differently, and, you know, it's easier access online. But I also like that they're taking a data-driven approach to, you know, do a test run, monitor it, and then see what the data tells us. So, you know, I think it's a good direction to go for 2023, and you know, it's obviously going to be implemented in 2022 to be, you know, for the data to drive our decision in 2023. So, I think we're going to have a whole year of data to reference, and I think that should drive our decision around this time next year.
Councilmember Douglas.
This doesn't prohibit us from personally letting people know that there's a meeting, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Huseman. I just want to touch on the reason why we want about 6 to 7 months to look at data is because sometimes there are agendas throughout the year that have a popular agenda item, to say the least. So, for example, the Can-Am hearing agenda, our yearly traffic, whenever I looked in Legistar at the end of December, was about 2,400 hits, and 1,400 of those were for the week of the Can-Am agenda posting. So we want a longer time period to see if there's any spikes as outliers, and then track engagement over that time period.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, will the city clerk please read the title, and then we'll do a voice vote.
Resolution 2021-114, a resolution regarding posting locations for ordinances and public meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Next up, we have ordinances on first reading. Ordinance 2365, amending the 2022 budget for costs associated with the Buffalo Run Golf Course Well Project. Would like to invite Jamie Rice, City Planner, to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Huseman. This is Jamie Rice for planning staff. The request before you tonight is the approval of the Buffalo Run Golf Course well drilling with a sole source justification and reappropriation ordinance. Buffalo Run Golf Course has experienced drought in the most recent years that has affected its ability to irrigate at a sufficient level to minimize impact on operations. The golf course is currently being served by irrigation wells and an existing irrigation storage pond that allows a drawdown of approximately 384 acre-feet a year. However, in past years, the golf course has nearly reached this limit on heavy drought years. The need for an alternative irrigation source at the golf course has been identified by city staff as a part of our city water team. The water team has researched alternatives to provide additional water to the golf course. It was determined to be the most cost-effective and the best use of resources to drill the well into the lower Arapahoe aquifer for use of an irrigation well. As you'll see here, we narrowed it down to two possible considerations. The first one you'll see is a non-tributary well in the lower Arapahoe aquifer, and that cost was approximately $400,000 for well drilling. The other choice was a non-potable supply through South Adams County Water and Sanitation. After talking to the manager over there, it looked like it was going to be approximately $800,000 to connect to the 112th line through South Adams County, and additionally, we would pay approximately $78,000 a year for that water to run through that line. So as you can see, just looking at those numbers, that it was clear to go for the non-tributary well in the lower Arapahoe aquifer for that well drilling alone. So a little bit more about this lower Arapahoe well. It's a non-tributary well, which means that it's not subject to water rights or administration by the state. This means that when we draw down, that that water, that it's not being taken from any other water source. Right now, we have an augmentation plan, which is what would be used if it was a tributary well. We would have to replace that water. However, this is a non-tributary well, so that means that we do not have to have an augmentation plan, and we are free to draw down as much as there is. Again, this is in the lower Arapahoe Aquifer. The state of Colorado is made up of different aquifers, and this is the one that happens to be below Buffalo Run. For this particular aquifer, we already have rights for up to 40 acre-feet a year based on ownership of golf course lands. It was identified by the water team that we would need approximately 40 to 60 additional acre-feet a year for this contingency plan for the Buffalo Run Golf Course. So as we discovered that we have rights for up to 40 acre-feet, it was pretty perfect that we go ahead and consider this option as it meets within that range of the contingency plan that we were hoping for. We have been working with our consultants, Applegate Engineering. They went ahead and did an RFP on behalf of the city. We got 2 respondents for that well drilling. Right now, well drillers are extremely busy, and we did not get as many bids as we would have liked. But Lane Christensen was one of the companies that did respond, and they're a very reputable company within Colorado. They are very responsive, and we've worked with them before. So this is a reputable well drilling company, and their bid came at a very competitive price. So staff, upon looking at the 2 bids, staff decided that we would go with Lane Christensen. And taking a look at the lower Arapahoe Aquifer water statistics, there was a study that was determined that the Buffalo Run area groundwater levels haven't changed substantially since 1990. Our current well permit also indicates water levels are holding relatively steady. In 1996, they were at 350 feet, and in 2017, they were at 321.5. So roughly about 27 acre-feet changed in about 30 years. So, I'm sorry, 20 years. The model determined also that the Buffalo Run area, the water level in the aquifer would either see no change or decreases at most 50 feet by 2053, just from looking at those projections from the past and other modeling. This is a site map, the Buffalo Run Golf Course. You can see that little red triangle is that potential well location. For the timeline, after talking to Parks and Recreation staff, they would like to have a contingency plan or some sort of action by October 2022. That's typically when the water year ends. So if we were to reach those drought levels for any reason and we would need an alternative, we would need it by October of 2022. So that's when the water year ends. If we were to run out of those 384 drawdowns, and we would need to, we would have this well in place by October 2022. As a part of that timeline, we do need to go through the state permitting process, which would take about a maximum of 60 days. Our water consultants will be working on behalf of the city to submit all of that paperwork and get that started for us. When we can actually get the well drillers, it will only take a week. The actual process is not very long. However, we have to abide by the availability of the well drillers. So whenever they're available, when they can get in there, it'll only take a week. So by reaching that by October 2022, we'll have a contingency plan in place for Buffalo Run to keep operations going and to solve this alternative water supply issue. So right now, staff is recommending council to approve the reappropriations ordinance and sole source justification for the Buffalo Run irrigation well. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Hurst?
Can we just have a quick discussion about what happens when we've exceeded our water resources and had to go other places to either purchase or let the grass die?
We did an emergency connection to South Adams Water and Sanitation District 2 years ago when we ran short. And that was even after the grass did suffer, so it really is not a good situation when we do encounter a drought situation. The other item that I would add for information, we're recommending use of the water acquisition fee fund, and that was set aside to acquire additional water for all city facilities wherever we may need it. So that's our recommended source of funds.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Douglas.
How long do you expect this water to last? Is this something that it replenishes itself through groundwater, or is this, do you have any idea how long the water will last?
Well, we can't predict for sure. The modeling that they did on that aquifer anticipates that by 2053, the most it would decrease is by 50 feet. But the water in that aquifer does replenish, but it's very slow over time. So for the foreseeable future, we anticipate this will be a reliable source of water.
Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
There has been some talk of another golf course at on the west side of Chambers at 112th. Would that be an entirely different source of water, or would we find ourselves in the same position of having to look for water should there be a golf course there?
The proposal that we received from Oakwood is that would be a totally separate source of water, and they would bring the water to that project.
Well, I know this will make a lot of golfers happy to know that there is more water coming into this course. It had a lot of trouble last year, so this is good news that you found a source and at a more competitive price. Thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
The Lower Arapahoe is a potable water source that is opportunity for drinking water for additional development, whether it be commercial, residential. And the northern area has a dual system using the irrigation side of that system, shallow irrigation aquifers that are actually have a heavy replacement of that water due to the fact that there are clay liners that have went up along the river, has backed some of that water up. And some of the homes near the river have had flooding in the past on wetter years. I think it would be a much better source of water to use, an irrigation source, than a potable source just for conservation of our water resources for future years for Commerce City. I know the cost is of an issue. Also, if we go with this particular aquifer in the Lower Arapahoe, is there opportunity to purchase more water in that aquifer, or utilize some of our open space areas to be able to get the Lower Arapahoe allocations for the land that is underneath of our open space to add additional irrigation opportunities if we go this way? Because if you need 40 to 60, and this will do 40, and it's also taking potable supplies for future development of our community, I would rather have an in-depth discussion about irrigation aquifers that would not deplete our potable supply for future use, as well giving us more opportunity for additional water resources if needed later on. And I think looking at 400,000 versus 800,000 with the district, we have partnered with them on some of their irrigation supply lines and things of that nature. I would really like to see if the city could go into negotiations to try to get that price down further and look at other options with the district versus eating up the potable water supply for future development.
That opens up a pretty complex discussion. One of the items to keep in mind is that South Adams Water and Sanitation doesn't use the lower Arapahoe, to my knowledge. They have shallower wells. So it doesn't affect potable use or potable water for potable use, I should say, in Commerce City. The reason we can drill a well there on the golf course is because it was never joined to the district. The district requires any wells on any land that joins the district to be dedicated to them or capped and filled and that type of thing. So for that reason, we can still drill a well here. We cannot drill wells on open space because that land has been joined to the district, to my knowledge. All of the developments, when they dedicate their land, when they develop their land, their entire, land area joins the water and sanitation district, whereas this property never did.
I don't disagree with you, Roger. The lower Arapahoe is used by most of the unincorporated Adams County developments that are in that area. Could we create a liability situation further down the road by utilizing this water? Or is this a resource that South Adams may have to look at for future development opportunities of this community? Because we did the FRICO deal. We've done several deals over the years, the 3,000 acre feet from Denver through the negotiations of the cleanup of the arsenal. There was a lot of water deals that have happened in the past. I just know this is a source of potable water, and it's some of the better water in all of the aquifers under Commerce City. It's a very high grade potable water that I just don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot today for something that we need tomorrow. I want to make sure we water the golf course too, but I want to be prudent about how we do it.
Yes, what we could do is have another conversation with the water district about that, using their irrigation system and see if there's a way to reduce that cost. This was based on our initial discussions with them, I want to say, it's been months ago anyway. So, they have a new manager. We could certainly reach out to the new manager and have that discussion and see if there's a viable way to accomplish what you're saying.
I would recommend that, and I would also let them know that if we can't work something out with them on their irrigation supply through the shallow irrigation aquifers, that we're going to utilize the lower Arapahoe, and that may push them to want to work with us on the irrigation side as to not deplete a potable source for long-term, later down the road needs for our community. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading ordinance 2365. Okay, we do not have a motion to approve that, so we will move on. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess real quick, and then we'll get into administrative council business and reports. Okay, let's go ahead and get started again. We're going to move on to administrative council business. We're going to start with the municipal judge recruitment section. Would like to invite Armando Guardiola, Director of Human Resources, to provide an update on the municipal judge recruitment process.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I just come forward tonight to provide some information as far as the municipal judge schedule. I also provided the packet. I believe the packet has been distributed. Everybody does have the packet. If you want to move to the first page, which is page 1, that will be the page that I will be discussing as far as the schedule for the municipal judge recruitment. Right now, we are in our preliminary stage, which means we have preliminary candidates. We have had 7 candidates that applied. We screened and we moved 4 along for council to individually interview. And so what I've done here is, as of today, you will receive the schedule. You also receive the application and resumes for you to review. I've also provided a list of interview questions that I would like for each individual council member to look at and select 2 questions and send those to me by Thursday. At that time, we will put those lists together. We do have a schedule of 4 candidates on next Monday, starting at 6:05. I also provided the metrics that we will be using on Monday. And any additional questions, if you guys have for me right now, I can answer. Otherwise, I provided all the resumes and applications for you to review. I do ask that we keep this confidential, as right now it's still preliminary candidates. It's not an official final list yet. So therefore, we're keeping this confidential. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Guardiola, putting us all together. Can you tell me what are the residency requirements for this position?
The residency requirements is, per charter, the individual needs to be reside in Adams County.
Great. So I see one of these individuals listed a Littleton address.
Correct. We vetted all these, and that is the address that he put on there, but he actually does live in Adams County, sir. Okay. Or Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Per council policy, except for emergency or unforeseen items, council members are encouraged to submit administrative business items by the Tuesday before the meeting with another council member's endorsement. Do any council members have administrative business items of an emergency or unforeseen circumstance? Seeing none, we'll move on to our council reports. Would like to invite City Manager Tinklenberg to give his report.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, got tangled up in my mask. Few items that we didn't have time to go over at the last meeting. One is to just let you know that staff has interviewed teams for working on updating the sign code and have evaluated their proposals. Also, staff is evaluating a proposal to review and recommend changes to the LDC, Land Development Code, PUD, and mixed use sections for your consideration. And then also under administrative subdivisions, staff made or is making changes to the notification process, and that's to provide council with additional review time. In terms of building safety, they have revamped their website presence and are now providing a wealth of information that was not previously available online. So now, instead of calling to speak to a permit technician, many questions can be answered by visiting c3.com/building permits. And also, sorry. Conference room updates. The Information Technology Department has been updating the audiovisual equipment in the council workroom, the city manager's conference room, and also at the MSC. And those are finished, and they're now working on community development's training room or conference room to get that updated, and then HR training room will be next. And then following that will be the police department briefing room. In terms of Parks Recreation Golf, they are working on plans for the 2022 summer concerts in the parks. Hopefully we will be able to proceed with that. And then from Public Works, they wanted to let us know that the design for 88th Avenue widening is 60% complete, and the executive director of CDOT has signed off on the FONSI, that's the finding of no significant impact, and then they also secured an additional $1 million from DRCOG. On the 120th Avenue widening, staff is working with that developer and that Metro District on getting that intergovernmental agreement put together. And then for the Rosemary widening, we have continued to have discussions with South Adams County Water and Sanitation District for acquiring a parcel of their ground for the drainage pond that is necessary there. And then also been working with the fire district on easements and right-of-way. Last year, City Council approved purchase of mobile fueling tanks, and that's particularly for wintertime emergency snow conditions. The mobile diesel fuel tank was delivered last year in December, and the mobile gasoline tank will be coming in January, about the middle of this month. And that's, of course, for fuel for the police cars, because if the area loses electricity, we lose the capacity to be able to pump gas at a filling station. Wanted to let you know also that in January, on the 17th, we'll be bringing to you the Eagle Point dehumidification bids for approval of a contract for replacing that system. That's in the Eagle Point Recreation Center, and that work would be done as part of the annual maintenance shutdown that occurs approximately in August. And then also to give you an update, MSC backup generators, that was approved by council last year. All of those units were installed last year, and at the time of this writing, they were proceeding with punch list items and training for staff. And you notice the black chairs, the 250 chairs were delivered in December, and that was to replace all the chairs that were damaged and discolored, stained, and that type of thing. And then one final item, 112th Avenue widening, that was done by a special intergovernmental agreement between the city and Reunion. They did the final accounting on that project, and Reunion is reimbursing $29,000 to the city as the final accounting on the project. And then in terms of items this week, checked on Tri-County Health's records. They show Adams County incident rate for the last 2 weeks for COVID-19 has gone up 288%, and that's at a rate of 674 per 100,000 population. In terms of Adams County vaccinations, 82.7% have one dose. 2 doses is at 75.1%, and 42.88% have the booster. We're continuing to require mask wearing in the city facilities. And then user impact fees, contract with Wilden Financial Services to conduct the citywide study of user and impact fees has been executed, and that will kick off in the middle of January. There was a complaint, this is just general information, there was a complaint about weeds along 120th Avenue. the property owner was contacted, and they advised that they've been looking for a contractor to cut those properties, and so they were given an extension of 7 days. In terms of the street lights on Highway 2, that's where the wiring was stolen. The streetlight contractor has ordered the new copper wire and will begin repairs on the 20th. They estimate that it'll take about 4 weeks to repair all of those stoplights, or all of those streetlights, sorry. And then we have a dilemma. We were not able to obtain agreement on retreat dates. It had been proposed for February 4 and 5. That does not work. And so another possible date is the 11th and 12th of February. Or we had also tested for the 18th and 19th, but did not get agreement on that one either. So we really need agreement where all council members can be present. So is the 11th and 12th a possibility for people, or is that not a possibility?
I have no conflicts.
February 11 and 12? Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. That's a relief.
I might have one. I have to look at my other calendars before I can confirm.
Okay. Would you be able to do that in the next day or two?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Then moving on to active land use cases, we're at 178 active entitlement applications. Reporting on total residential permits for last year, the total was 1,624 residential permits were issued. In terms of emergency rental assistance, we are at $1,374,150 as of last week. That has been distributed. In terms of updating the PUD and mixed-use zone districts, contract with a vendor has been executed, and that's anticipated to kick off here shortly. In terms of sign postings, the staff is working on a policy that would require sign postings on property to be 4 by 8 feet in English and in Spanish. And then in terms of the municipal judge recruitment, the reason that you were requested to keep it confidential is these applicants very likely have not had a chance to share this with their current employer, and so we would ask, that's why, if you would keep it confidential at this point. When you do get to your list of finalists, that's when they're notified and they need to respond or notify their employer. In terms of the Blue Ribbon Economic Development Advisory Council, they will begin meeting this month. There are still a few open spots for members, so talk it up if you would. Revolving Loan Fund, we have partnered with Colorado Enterprise Fund to establish a revolving loan fund program for small businesses that were set up in 2020. To date, 11 loans have been made to businesses totaling $229,000. There's an additional $166,000 that's available to loan out. In terms of a highlight on Commerce City, Business View magazine reached out to me and asked to interview us, and they're proposing to do a 6 to 8 page highlight of Commerce City and businesses that are located here in Commerce City. I'll add a note on that. They're also looking for Commerce City-related businesses to pay for the advertising that's associated with that. So who knows if they'll still be running that feature, but hopefully they're able to. In terms of human resources, the equity adjustments were done. This was approved by City Council as part of the 2022 budget. And what that did is that put us in alignment with the local market. In years past, there were a lot of small communities all the way up into Wyoming that were included in the market analysis. And that was just simply no longer viable in terms of our competitive market. So the employees are very appreciative of the adjustments that were made, and that was made to all the general employee salaries and wages below my level. So it did not include me. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Parks, Recreation, and Golf, the Monaco Park renovation, DHM was awarded the contract for the renovation design. And then also the recreation centers have been serving as mobile vaccination clinics, again, trying to get more people vaccinated. The chief sent out an email last week, if I remember correctly, reporting on the crime data mapping. That's available on the city website, so do want to direct your attention to that. And then in terms of the Marshall Fire, the city received requests for mutual aid assistance from Boulder County, and the emergency manager is coordinating a response. Some of those requests were for immediate police service type of assistance. Others are for longer-term stability, whether that be building officials, safety inspectors, that type of thing. We do have 2 inspectors who are certified in damage assessment. And then that raised the question from one of our residents regarding reverse 911. And landlines do not need to register. They're automatically included. However, cell phones must register in advance of an emergency. And there is a link that the chief tweeted out this afternoon or this evening in terms of how to sign up for that for your cell phones. Also, they're continuing to see staffing challenges because of COVID-19 exposures and infections. We've had a number of staff members, not only in the police department, but in other departments as well, who have had to quarantine because they have had immediate family members who have tested positive for COVID. So what the police department is doing, they're operating at minimum staffing, and they have an emergency staffing plan to move forward. And if they need to put into place, they will put into place 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off. But again, that will cause a reduction in priority 2 calls for service in terms of response time. Public Works, 108th Avenue construction. One of the companies that's locating there, IOV, is building out 88th Avenue east of Havana. And the initial acceptance for that is occurring. And then update on Brighton Road, 104th to 112th. The road closure started on December 27, and the contractor has already drove in sheet piles last week and will be demolishing the existing bridge this week and next. And then bridge girders are scheduled to be set early February. And then once that's done, as soon as the weather allows, they will do the paving over that new bridge deck. Also, the bridges at Potomac and Peoria, there's a road closing that was to occur today, and estimated completion of that will be at the end of March. Sorry, but again, that depends on weather. So they would start demolishing the existing bridge next week, and then construction of the bridge culvert for that would occur before March. In terms of the snowstorm, the Parks and Streets crews did that staffing. They worked around the clock, 24 hours during the snowstorm to take care of all of the snow removal on the streets, and really appreciate the work that they did. I believe that covers everything that I needed to cover. But again, for people that want to register for Reverse 911, they do need to sign up in advance. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You mentioned January 17th, we'd see those bids, but we will not have a meeting on the 17th because of the Martin Luther King holiday. So
Yeah.
those will come to us February.
First meeting in February. Thank you.
And are those units different than what we just approved this evening?
I believe the stuff from this evening was the pool area dehumidification system.
Right, no. Sorry, looking back through my note. Let me dig into that. I'll respond here a little bit later if you don't mind.
Sure. And then my question on that would be, if we're already paying a mechanical contractor to come out and do some units on there, wouldn't it be more cost effective to have the same contractor doing the work and just tacking it on as a change order, as opposed to potentially another contractor coming out here? And then we have to have two separate crane rentals, and we have to have two separate contractors trying to coordinate that.
There's a possibility that the amount would have exceeded the procurement policy limit. So again, let me check into that and get back to you.
Thank you. Anybody else on council have any questions regarding the city manager's report? Seeing none, we'll move to Mr. Hurst.
Apologies. Roger, can you tell me, does the delivery of the diesel fuel tank and then, a couple weeks from now, the gasoline fuel tank allow us to do bulk purchasing, or is this for emergency only?
Well, the size of the tank isn't really, it would depend on our provider whether that qualifies for a bulk discount or not. We'd have to find that out.
Yeah, I think it'd be how much in the future you're buying. You'd have to buy lots and lots of gallons. But okay, I just wanted to understand if that's what we're doing, because basically we're putting a fuel reserve there for emergencies only right now. Okay.
That's the main purpose, yes, sir.
And then just a question, I was listening to the 88th expansion project and kind of on one side of town, but on the other side, can we, now that the holidays are over, get scheduled with E470, the discussions around 88th with them as well?
Yes, I believe that's in process already. Mr. Rogers, do you have an update for us on that?
Thank you, City Manager Tim LeBrook. Yes, Councilmember Hurst, we are in process of, we have reached out in attempts to schedule that meeting. Given the holidays, we had not received a response, so staff was reaching back out this week so that we can get that scheduled.
Appreciate it. Let me know if you need me to knock on the door a little louder.
Will do, sir.
Are there any other questions for the city manager regarding his report? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Hayter.
Good evening. I don't really have any sort of formal report for you tonight. There's two things I did want to mention very briefly. First, you were all previously informed that Mr. Brian Swan in our office was out of the office temporarily on an emergency medical issue with family. He has returned to the office as of last week, so he was able to obviously come back in and start making significant contributions and trying to help get us caught up at the end of the year here. The other thing I wanted to mention is that you should expect to see an updated litigation report from me this week as well. So look for that in your email. That's all I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Hayter? Seeing none, does any council member wish to make a report? Councilmember Noble.
I had a meeting with Representative Benavides, Commissioner Odoricio, and CDPHE and the gubernatorial staff regarding the anti-degradation rule that was made by the Water Quality Control Commission. Representative Benavides doesn't want to wait until September, so she's talking about bringing legislation forward in the spring, and that was what the conversation was about. The staff had made the recommendation to the Water Quality Control Commission to include the Suncor area in its ruling, and the commissioners voted not to do so. So she plans to move forward with it in that direction. I was on the Tri-County Health call today, and one of the points that it was mostly about legislators talking about their bills that are coming forward, but one of the points that was made by the head of Tri-County Health is that they have learned that 2 doses are ineffective and are recommending that everybody get the booster. And finally, I was really, really impressed over the holiday after the Marshall Fire by Commerce City residents who stepped up to organize a donation drive, and impressed with their generosity. There's a group who sort of calls itself Renewal, and I won't call out all the people who were involved because I'm probably going to overlook someone who was there. But it was very moving. It was particularly moving to me because 30 years ago, I lost my home in a wildfire with 350 other homes. And like many, on the day the Marshall Fire came through, I was not at home, so I wasn't able to save anything. And I just want to extend my heartfelt condolences to all of those who lost their homes in the Marshall Fire, and those who have not been able to get back into their homes yet. They have a long, long road ahead of them, and anything that we can do as a city, and any services, as you were talking about, City Manager Tinklenberg, I think is really wonderful on our part to accomplish. So thank you very much for everybody's generosity and kindness, and may it continue in 2022. Thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
Councilwoman Noble touched on a few of the things, the Marshall Fire, and condolences to the people that have lost everything that they had. I also want to congratulate the South Adams Fire Department for assisting and helping to save some of the homes in that area. Also, anything that the city can do without depleting our resources to be able to help the town of Superior, Marshall, Louisville, where we can. I would love to be able to help them out, whether it be inspections or whatever. But again, with the caveat not to deplete our resources. The other thing I wanted to ask is, given the tragedy that we had last week in our Parks Department and Parks Maintenance, Public Works, you know, I worked in the Public Works Department for nearly 10 years. I just want to make sure that we have a schedule of safety meetings that take place, whether they're daily safety meetings, weekly safety meetings, to make sure that I know COVID has changed a lot of things. Don't know who all is where and when, but it's very important that we have a schedule and we stick to it on safety briefings to do what we can to eliminate this from ever happening again.
Any other council members wishing to make a report? Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, thank you. I would also like to echo the feelings of Councilmember Noble and Councilmember Ford for the loss that the people have endured from the Marshall Fire. Also, condolences to the Mac Gesso family. I can't even imagine what they're going through right now, and want them to know that the people here in the city extend their condolences and sympathy to them. With the Marshall Fire, though, I would also like to remind everyone that this is the result of the climate crisis that we're in, and we have to recognize it. What happened there could happen anywhere now with what we're experiencing and what we've put ourselves into. And so, with recognizing that, it is time to understand that we have to move in the direction of transition and conversion. We have to do something about what's happening with our climate. It's real. And anything that we can do as a city to move in that direction, I would like us to look at how we got here and how we can get out of it and how we can be leaders in moving forward in that direction. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. On December 21st, I met with Alex Luna from United for a New Economy and the tenants that live at Village Crest Apartments. They just wanted to address some of their living conditions and, hope that I can continue to work with them to see, how city staff can help them improve their living situations. Thank you, and that's all I had.
Any other council members wish to make a report? Seeing none, I have a brief one. Last week, we had a meeting with the Metro Mayor Caucus to discuss what kind of relief effort we could do for the Marshall Fire. Probably coming back to request council for some funding to be donated through the Metro Mayor Caucus to help with that relief effort. That's the extent I have for report. Next on the agenda, we have a potential executive session. Looking for a motion and a second to enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, subparentheses F, for the purpose of discussing personnel matters relating to the city manager's performance of the management of the police department. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Madera.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. We'll now enter into an executive session. The City Council will return to potentially take action following the executive session, and the meeting and broadcast will remain up until we adjourn the meeting in public. Done, so we can get this meeting adjourned and get everybody home to their families. Cool. Let's see.
Mayor Huesman, we are good.
Okay, we are back from executive session. Appreciate the public's patience while we had that session. This time, do any council members wish to make a motion? Councilmember Hurst?
All right, I move that the recording of the executive session from October 18, 2020, addressing the performance of the city manager be retained until 30 days after city council has received the report from any investigation regarding the police chief's interactions with Utah law enforcement and the related information that was transmitted to city council.
Councilmember Madera?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to direct that the recording of the executive session that occurred on October 18th, 2020 regarding the city manager's performance be retained to at least 30 days until after any investigation has occurred into the police chief's interactions with any law enforcement agency in the state of Utah. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Aye.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, that was your aye. The delay there gets me. Any opposed, say nay. And that motion carries unanimously. We do not have a meeting as said earlier on July 17th. We have study sessions on, January 17th, January 10th, and January 24th. So until then, have a good night. Have a good week. Good night, Commerce City. Meeting is adjourned.